Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're going to be discussing Thai work permits, specifically some rather big news, or I should say some news has gone viral here around Thailand with respect to Thai work permit rules and the rules regarding how the permits operate. There's even been some speculation about whether or not one needs a work permit anymore. As I'll get to in both this video and another video I did contemporaneously with this one, I do believe work permits continue to be a necessity, although certain aspects of the work permit are no longer necessarily required. So certain restrictions are being lifted, it would appear. Now, I want to be clear as I preface this video, no one should take this video as the end-all be-all when it comes to work permits. This video was made at the end of July 2018, early August 2018. It is not definitive. My personal opinion is that probably these rules are going to see another redraft as they have before, as the current rules as they seem to operate with respect to work permit holders in Thailand. Basically, they seem to operate now in a certain way. I think it's very possible we could see another redraft rather shortly that could see them operate in an entirely different way in the foreseeable future. So how that's going to play out remains to be seen. I've actually discussed some of this at length before. A lot of these changes came about as a result of, or would seem to be coming about as a result of migrant labor issues that have been an issue in Thailand about the last 18 months. Basically, they really overhauled the regime with respect to work permit holders from countries such as the Kingdom of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Malaysia. But everybody sort of gets hit with the same broad brush because foreigners are foreigners in Thailand and certain labor rules are going to apply to them all. A recent article that I think was very good, published Sunday, July 29th, 2018 by Gerald Kippen, in the Phuket News, PhuketNews.com. The article is titled, Phuket Law Royal Decree Blows Work Permits Wide Open. Quoting directly from that article, under the old rules, foreigners who needed a work permit were prohibited from doing any work for any employer anywhere under any such conditions, if such were not detailed and therefore permitted in the work permit itself. That is no longer the case. This is a very long article. My hat's off, quite frankly, to the author of this article, because they do a really good job of going through two different emergency decrees that changed the laws as they were set, I think, about 10 years ago. Actually, I can probably, about 10 years ago, back in 2008. Frankly, with respect to regulatory and legislative changes, 10 years is a good interval. I think we are seeing some changes that are going to be relatively fixed for a fairly long period of time, probably another 10 years. If exactly what they're talking about in this article is going to be what we're fixed with for 10 years, that remains to be seen. As the author of this notes, and as I take note of in the past, there are actually two different emergency decrees that operate with respect to this. One was essentially passed, I think, back in 2017, right around the same time last year. There was another one, I believe, back in March. There had been some vagueness surrounding it. Obviously, it pertains to foreigners, but it's written in Thai, and not only that, it's legal language. So it can be a little bit difficult at times to understand. Again, hats off to the author of that article, and I urge those who are watching this video to go check it out because he does go ahead and go through in fairly good detail about how the old rules were amended and then subsequently re-amended, resulting in some of this. I think this was probably a long time coming. I do think that they're going to pop off a lot of the sort of inherent restrictions to work permits. When I first came to Thailand some 10 years ago, there was still operating some rather older rules with respect to Thai work permits. Most notably, there was a field of thought that stated that essentially you were confined to exactly the address that was noted in the work permit when working. Later on, that seemed to, in my opinion, that was kind of loosened up, especially when they added specifically, they denoted the province in the work permit. And from that point forward, I always sort of took the position, as long as you were in the province of the work permit and operating within the general scope of the work permit, probably it was going to be okay. Again, this is all subject to interpretation as well as, executive actions with respect to officers at the labor ministries, etc. But by and large, I think it was pretty safe to say that, you could operate within the province. Now, again, according to this analysis, and I think it's fairly solid on this point, I think they are going to go ahead and lift certain restrictions with respect to issued work permits. Now, there seems to be some, in my opinion, I'm not totally clear on it, so I may need to do another video entirely on this. There seems to be some question as to whether or not work permits are even required at all with respect to certain types of companies. It would appear things like BOI companies may, at some point in the future, become exempted from work permit rules. I've seen some speculation about other types of foreign businesses like representative offices, etc., may not be required to have work permits. I'm going to hold off my final opinion on that, or at least my more concrete opinion, if you will, on that topic until a later date, because I'm still reading through this stuff and it's kind of hard to conceptualize on the best of days. And I still am not certain that this anti-foreign, or this sort of, if it's a foreign company issue, has fully been sort of sussed out. Again, there's another video I made contemporaneously with this one discussing work permits in an amity treaty context. Exactly how that's going to play out, I think it's fairly clear with respect to amity, or at least in my mind it's relatively clear. That being said, one final thing of note, especially with, and let me be clear with respect to the non-work permit issue, what I think, and this may be me trying to interpret the spirit of these regulatory changes, what I think they're trying to do is there's going to be certain kinds of temporary workers coming into Thailand who it's just not feasible to process them through to get a 2-week work permit or something. I think one thing that's being articulated, or that they're trying to articulate in these regulatory changes, is certain types of temporary workers coming in from out of the country may not have work permit requirements on them. Another one, I think this may be more probably to the point, is from my reading, and again, I'm not going to go so far as to say I believe this concretely. I'm simply saying I think I see in the interpretation of these new regulations some basis for making the following assertion, which is it may be possible that they are going to allow like directors who are not based in Thailand to perhaps fly in to sign various relevant documentation, and those individuals will not be required to have a work permit. I could see, based on how the regs are currently written, or these emergency decrees are how they're composed, sort of their framework, for lack of a better term. I can kind of see where one could interpret that. Look, yeah, folks that have to fly in to say sign off on a audited financial statement because the director is not based in Bangkok, but the company is a subsidiary in a larger regional or global operation, those individuals may not necessarily be required to have work permits in the future. That being said, they might. I can see this thing interpreted one of two ways on that particular topic. But for temporary folks, I think it's fairly clear that it might not be required, depending on the way that the company is structured, that someone with signing authority necessarily needs to have work authorization. That being said, and bringing it back to the main point, yes, I do think work permit regulations are being relaxed. Does that mean one does not necessarily need to have a work permit? I'd say that's not the case. I think we're still going to see work permits being required for most things moving forward, although, again, sort of remains to be seen. Finally, the other thing that I would take note of is I haven't seen how this interacts with immigration regulations. So this is why I'm somewhat believing this may be, there's maybe certain work permit exemptions for those who are not residing in Thailand or living full-time in Thailand, because again, those folks could maybe fly in, temporarily be here for some corporate purpose, and then leave rather quickly. Whereas those who are living here, I could see maybe they have a relatively similar function, but they're still required to have work permits long-term. Again, remains to be seen. I have yet to see, and I've discussed with immigration officers over the past week or so, kind of in an offhanded way, but yeah, we've asked them the question, do you see any changes with respect to B visa extensions and work permits? And as of yet, I haven't heard from anyone that's told me that anything's going to fundamentally change on that. That being said, tomorrow I could have somebody tell me something totally different. So maybe stay tuned to this channel. I can provide some more clarity. I don't mean to be overly vague in certain parts of this, but quite frankly, when you're in a state of flux with some of these rules, there are certain aspects that are vague. So moving forward, we'll try to do another update on this and provide some further clarity.